Hello, everyone. Welcome to this series where we explore the differences and the common grounds between the North and the South and how things work in the textile and fashion supply chain. And this is the first of the series of different webinars that we're going to have, like a podcast series. And I'm Saqib Suhail, and with me is Deb Zell, and we'll be hosting this webinar together. And today our guests are Tricia Carey and Mukhdoom Mashood. Both of you, would you like to introduce yourself first? Tricia?
Sure. Thank you, Saqib and Deb. Appreciate being here. And this is such a important conversation that we need to have right now in the industry. So my name is Tricia Carey. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at Avalo. Avalo is based in North Carolina. And what we do is we use AI for crop evolution and supply chain efficiency. I have a background in fiber innovation and development. I'm very excited about the work that we can do now with the intersection of textiles, AI, and ag. Really, we're reaching a new milestone within the industry and everything that we can do with technology these days. So I look forward to further discussions and can explain more about what we're doing and how that falls so well into a lot of the points that we want to cover today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Really appreciate you being here. And Mukhdoom Saab, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. First of all, thank you both of you for arranging this online event, virtual event. Well, we are working with Agrecir Impact Private Limited. We work with farmers and we develop new markets for the farmers. We come along and with some technology, and we work like partners. So we're not service providers, but we're partners in the processes. We are working in Tanzania, we're working in Kenya, Tajikistan, Slovenia, and Turkey. Also, we just added Sri Lanka to our list of geographies. So we take along the farm economy with us, and we partner with the farmers. So we make the projects successful as a business for the farmers.
And would both of you like to add, where are you based?
We're based in Pakistan. The headquarters are in Pakistan, but we keep along moving whenever and wherever we are wanted to be.
And I am based in New York. As I mentioned, Avalo is out of North Carolina. There's a lot of research happening in that area for agriculture, and our cotton program that we're working on is in the High Plains area of Texas, around Lubbock and Amarillo.
Amazing. Thank you guys for joining us. And I think it's very important for us to clarify that this is not a North versus South dialogue. It's more like a bridging dialogue where we would love to see where the gaps are, how to bridge them. And today we would love to explore with both of you that your perspectives and your perceptions of working with the farmers, the fields, the textile supply chain, how that differs in each geography, and what we can learn from each other as well to improve the supply chain and the communities that we're working with. So yeah, this is going to be the main crux of the whole discussion. So Deb, take it away. Let's start with the discussion then.
Yeah, so Tricia and Mukhdoom, can you tell us how you got started in this industry?
So for us, it was like a very decided sort of a business, because we come from a farming community and we have a farming background. We were working with agriculture since generations. So we felt the need that there's a demand for straightening the vision and the business course for the farmers, because we felt that things are going quite haphazard and there are multiple options for the farmers, and the only problem is to choose what to choose and when to choose and why to choose. So that decision, that logic should be imparted with our farmers. The learnings which we had in our family and businesses should be presented before the farming community. So that led us to become more formal and enhance the group and enter into partnerships. So we are working with different partners now, global partners. Some of them are in US, some of them are in Canada, some of them are in the UK. So we are working with multiple farmers, not just for the inputs, but also for learning about the policy and future markets. So that's something which we employ in our operations at the grassroots level, with the small farmers particularly, because they are the ones who are shaping the economy of the rural environment.
Oh, that's great. I know we've, had a brief discussion about the, how formal the farming sector is. And so we'll certainly come back to that. Tricia, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you came to be in the industry?
Yeah, I can explain a little bit about how Avalo came to be and then my intersection with Avalo. So Avalo started in 2000. And prior to that, one of the co-founders, Mariano Alvarez, was working on computational biology. And he was at Duke studying, and there was a lot happening at the time around interpretable machine learning. So all of this was sort of coming together. And he met up with Brendan Collins, our other co-founder, and they wanted to look at how they could solve big problems in the world and how you could use biology, mathematics, and using technology that was coming on the scene with machine learning. So that all came together, and they had a couple of years of getting the company started, looking at the best areas and the best crops to work with. And eventually that led them down the route of working with cotton after they'd already done some work in other crops like strawberries, looking at broccoli. And this led them into having, more of an impact on a row crop and a commodity like cotton. And so for the founders and where the company of where Avalo is going, we've looked at how we can map out the genetics. So we've actually studied more than 500 varieties of cotton, mapped out their genetic sequence, and that has become the basis of our rapid evolution platform, which we're able to pull from and make sure that we bring more diversity into cotton. By having this, then cotton can withstand the climate changes. And I'll go into more about how we started to work in Texas, how I connected with Avalo. I have been in different companies working on fiber innovation, more around man-made cellulosics. And, I thought, well, where's this industry going and how can I drive the most impact with the work that I'm doing? And someone introduced me to the Avalo team. I worked with them on their commercial strategy and then stayed on as their commercial director and leading our cotton development and getting that out into the supply chain. So really excited after so many years of working in the industry in more traditional ways of man-made cellulosics that come out of a factory. And every 3 months, you can come up with your new range of fibers. This is quite different being in agriculture where you're on another cycle. And I'm really enjoying that we have the interaction with farmers.
Oh, that's great. There were so many gold nuggets in, what you and Mukhdoom just said. And so we'll be circling back to dig into those a little bit later. Tricia, Mukhdoom, you both briefly alluded to this, but can you tell us a little bit more about the fibers that you work with? So I know we had a lot of mention of man-made cellulosics and cotton.
Yeah. So, right now at Avalo, I'm working on cotton, and that is coming out of the High Plains area of Texas. Previously, and I think just understanding the fiber industry and understanding how the supply chain works, whatever fiber you're working on. The challenges that exist right now in cotton around global sourcing, around equity from a farmer standpoint. When we look at global pricing, we look at policy challenges around forced labor that have come into play. So it's a really interesting time to be in the cotton industry. And, also there's a lot of progression towards regenerative farming and what does that mean? And so it's been really interesting to understand more of these challenges and working with supply chain partners, some of which, have been working in products that utilize a lot of cotton, but have never been on a cotton farm before.
You just mentioned organic versus regenerative, and I'm wondering if we want to take a moment just to talk about how that might differ in, Texas versus maybe some of the other places that were mentioned earlier. So Mukhdoom or Tricia, who would like to start on, taking us through what organic versus regenerative, what those differences might be in those different places?
Yeah,
Hey, Mukhdoom, you can start.
thank you. So before we, respond to the regenerative and organic systems, the comparison between both of them, I would just take a step backwards and share that we are working with cotton. That's the main fiber, which is focused crop. But then we are working with banana fibers. We are working with hemp. We are working with bamboo fibers, and also now working with a university on agri-waste. So that's it comes from many sources. But when we come to organic and regenerative fibers and systems, it's especially in our part of the world, it does not matter. The only thing which matters is the business, who wants what. So if there is a demand for organic cotton, people will be going towards organic cotton. If there's a demand for regenerative systems, people will be going towards regenerative systems. And it has a lot to do with the functionality of the processes also, which significantly includes the ease of doing business, and one of them is certifications. Which certificate is easy to get? What's the cost? What's the time involved in that? And how sooner can we materialize the entire agriculture produce towards a commodity that can be sold at a price which is demand required by the farmers. Now, there are a couple of things which we would like to discuss more in detail, and that I would request that we should someday organize a talk specifically on organic and regenerative, because it's a huge subject, and there are a lot of debates going on. Someone comes up with another definition which is totally disagreed by the certifiers and the practitioners who practice the systems. But then again, there's a debate about including or allowing the GMO come into the system, the GMO seed. So now there's a debate that maybe the seed companies are influencing the brands to adopt regenerative or the GMO seed into their business. So it's very tricky. But we are working on the policies. We are working with the academia and researchers to find out the best solution for the farmers. So it's what we see in the future. Also, it's all market based. Demand will be coming from the market itself. So we should be educating ourselves with the primary procurer.
Muslim sir, if I may add and ask, like the perspective of the workers, the farmers who are working on both of these things, and let's for a minute forget about organic and regenerative. How do they feel and they react when something new comes to them? And the same question will be to Tricia later on. Can briefly tell us, like, as you said, it's a business model, right? If business comes in, people will adopt. But is it easy for them to adopt? Because the system that you have in the global south, with farmers being small landowners, how do they react to that?
So if you look at the trend of adaptation, how people react to a new technology or a new product is quite amazing in our part of the world. You look at the mobile phones, they are rocketing. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, same is the case with cotton. When we started doing organic cotton in Pakistan, initially there was a resistance, not because they did not want to do it, but because they were not sure that they will be able to do it. So the problem was the skills and the inputs. Now, once that's done, and you have been part of that system as well. That Pakistan has now, we outsmarted our other cotton programs with our systems. We started from 1,500 acres, something like 2,000 acres. Now we have something like more than 300,000 acres all over Pakistan. So That explains how fast farmers took the organic cotton, how seriously, because it was doable, it was easy for them, the cost of inputs were low, they were quite conventional, and there was a premium. Now, when we came to regenerative system, people had the same impression that it will be uptaken by the consumers, by the brands, by the textiles, but that's not the case. People find regenerative to be more tricky, more circulating itself on the left and right, corners. There are apparently it seems very easy to be practiced, but when you go into certifications, you are in a maze. So that's like Alice in Wonderland. So people just go left and right. And so that's something which is now taking people away from regenerative agriculture, especially in Pakistan, and the small farmers are not quite appreciative of what's happening with the regenerative systems.
Yeah, Mukhdoom, I love how you refer to it as a system, because I think, we need to consider it in those ways. But I think overall farmers are skeptical, rightfully so. They are business people. They are out to, make a profit off of their work and what they're doing. I think anytime human nature there's resistance to change. So it's making sure that, the right values are placed behind any of that change that is occurring, and, that there is the support. So they have to build a trust on the ground. For Avalo working in Texas, our first year was in 2025. And, getting the farmers engaged, well, we had to do a lot, and we also had to have the right people on the ground to make sure that we could support them to be successful. Farmers in Texas have more land than typically what you would see in the South. And so for those farmers, yes, they got on board. I'm happy to say that our program in 2025, we had 2,000 acres with 10 farmers. Those farmers are all coming back again in 2026. But that success and that change only happens when you have the right resources to support through each stage. I think it's important to manage expectations at the right level as well. And, sometimes new programs can come, or new technology that can claim to be much more than what it really is. I am a bit concerned in looking at regenerative around certifications. I think we saw in the market with organic cotton a lot of, misinformation around organic certifications. And I think it's very important as we build out a new system around regenerative, how do we make sure that there's equity and that there is transparency, especially related to any of those claims or certifications?
Tricia, just quickly, can you, for folks who maybe aren't aware of some of those misconceptions, could you maybe talk through one or two of those?
Yeah. Well, I think what we saw with organic cotton through the years is that there was, everything was getting certified, and some of the certifications were not valid. Everybody was coming up with their own certification scheme. You could come up with your own and print off a certificate and say, hey, it's certified, but it might have been self-certified or a false certification. And I think the market never really had a good handle on that. And I think that became very detrimental to the growth of organic cotton, is really understanding where it came from and under what practices. But Mukhdoom, maybe you have more insight on that from being on the ground.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with you on the initial days of organic. But now, you see, it also depends on how we market a program. Now, when organic cotton was marketed in the developing world, the first thing which we came to know was that the organic certifications and organic program and organic agriculture gives a crop which is healthier, without pesticides, without GMO seeds. So it's good for health. So there was a gradual take up by and digestion by and not only the farmers, but also the communities, and they were quite happy that their soils will be getting less toxic, low poison, and they'll be getting closer to the nature. But unfortunately, that marketing strategy was not either adopted for the regenerative or was not put into place, and so the adaptation on a community level was absent. So we have a missing link between the community, the practice, the farm, and the produce, which in organic is now successfully quite embedded and painted well. So that chain of command from organic, which then reflects itself into health, is something which people are looking for now in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh. Everyone calls them their product as an organic product, because now that has become sort of a tab, and people like to have that tag of organic, whether it's certified, whether it's not, whether it's gone through a process or testing. So people do not even think of that. They just say, because I'm saying it's organic. See, my farm is like 200 kilometers away from the cities. There's no pollution. The water is clean, so it's organic. So, but it's being sold in the market, and that's the main thing, that people are accepting, the society, the community, and they're accepting the label of organic, and they want things to become organic. But now, unfortunately, with regenerative, as I said earlier, that marketing element is missing, and the farmers themselves, they're not happy the way regenerative has allowed GMO seeds and a little bit of pesticides, because it makes it very closer to the BCI regime of cotton, where they allow some sort of pesticide in their practices. So that they say there's no difference between BCI and other cotton programs, but the organic, it has maintained its sanctity. So that is something which the farmers and the community shares with us.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this brings us to an interesting point, both of you, that if farmers have a problem and if they have a concern, where do and how do they talk about it, right? And how is it different for both of your worlds? Do they have a platform? Do they have a stronger voice, or they need other people to support them, or they can do it on their own? Tricia, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think most farmers, especially in the region that we're working in the High Plains, they work through some of their local farming organizations. Some of them are experienced or want to take the time to be more vocal, because I think that's another part of it. The farmers are so busy doing all of the work. Do they also have the time to do some of that other advocacy? So they either, if they are strong enough to do it on their own, or work through a regional organization.
I think that the other important factor is that the support and the allied linkages, which is available in other part of the world, is that if any system comes in, then it's well knitted into the system, and especially with the policy makers. For instance, if there is a regenerative agricultural system on a mass scale on huge landslides in Texas and other parts of the world, and other parts, so then they can claim carbon credits. They have subsidies. They have people to support them. The CSR is there to support the farmers. There are the communities who come up and take up projects. But in countries like Pakistan and Tanzania and India and Bangladesh, these systems are lacking. So and that's why the commercial side of it is very slow when it comes to regenerative agriculture. So that needs, that the market needs to acknowledge the good work being done by the regenerative agriculture systems, but also the stakeholders, the people who are advocating regenerative systems in these parts of the world need to have the right people to do the advocacy, the policy work for them, make the connections with the market, and also aware the society that this system is not far from the organic itself.
I was going to ask, I think Mukhdoom raised this point a little bit earlier, in that, a lot of the certifications, because they're businesses, oftentimes they can harm that clarity and transparency. And, it just sort of seems like maybe some of them exist more as revenue generating institutions rather than
Completely. I think it's a very broken part of the system, is that certification. And I understand for brands or some of the supply chain, it might be an easy check the box. Okay. When I talk to brands, they want to know and they go down their list, but do they really understand what goes on behind those certifications? And how are they being traced? So this, I think as an industry, we need to come up with better solutions with technologies. The traceability exists to have the physical traceability within the cotton, and there you wouldn't need a certification if it was physically traceable. So I think certifications are definitely a broken part. And Mukhdoom, I wonder how you feel it could be improved in the South.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, there's nothing to differ with that. We are saying, we're facing the brunt of it. So
yeah,
I agree with you on that.
Yet organizations are making a lot of money off of these certifications, and someone has to pay for them. And a lot of times it's a farmer who has to pay for that, or if it's a collective of growers that wind up paying for this. And that part, I think, is really unfortunate and unfair in the system.
It seems as though that comes up throughout the supply chain. Not only are there all of these certifications that the farmers themselves grapple with, but then also as we start talking to different processors and mills along the way, there is another proliferation of potential certifications. And, to your point, they are really expensive. And, we keep hearing from suppliers that, if there was one standard rather than say 15 or 20 that they need to, keep track of, because, this particular large brand will only work with organizations that have these certifications. Meanwhile, this other large brand or these other large brands require these. It has a tremendous impact on the economics of production, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. That's true. But also, if you look at the real essence of certification was to filter things, but that filtering is not going on, and not in practice. So they're allowing the inputs which are causing depreciation to the yields and the soils and the product itself. So it's the real, I would say, a disaster for the industry, where in the name of certification, in the name of filtration, in the name of all that classification, we are accepting something, just which is a good cosmetics on it, and then nothing, and there's no machinery in itself to produce the right product. The other thing which you just mentioned, that is, but let's do a little mathematics. You make a list of all the certifiers and the certifications which someone got in a country, and look at the numbers, who did the most of the certifications, and then you trace back to their family tree, and you'll find that family tree related to the brand, somehow to the brand itself. All they have a partnership. So that's there are two sort of traceabilities, one with the crop, from the soil, from the seed to the produce, and then there should be another traceability of the certified itself, like in Latin they say, quis custodit ipsis custodes, then who will guard the guardians themselves? So then there should be a guards for the guardians also. So
yeah,
some should trace them as well.
Little checks and balances on that. But overall, why can't the industry get behind and go into one lane and not be so fragmented on all the certifications or another
There's
system?
no fun in that, Tricia.
Yeah.
There is no fun in being normal and easy.
Right.
It's always fun to be fragmented, and that's how you make more money out of the whole process. And
well, the other part is, what certification are there that exists around synthetics? So I think there's a lot that agriculture and fashion are interconnected. If you look at cotton, man-made cellulosic fibers, wool, any of those, and even some of the bio-based synthetics coming from corn and sugar, agriculture and fashion are highly interconnected.
It's interesting, Tricia,
Yeah.
that you raised that, and that makes me think that both parties know. Like the one party is a consumer who is buying all of that. Do they know where this product is coming from and how they're affecting that community? And then on the other hand, the community which is making all these products, giving a lot of hours and hard work and everything, do they really understand the downstream supply chain?
Yeah, exactly. There's not an understanding.
There,
How does that
go ahead.
how does that impact both, right? Like if the farmer does not know how their products are being used, he's only sitting in isolation producing cotton over and over again or hemp or any other product, then if he knew more about this process, would that make it different for him?
We've had a couple of tours now where we've brought farmers to see the spinning process. Most of them know up to ginning because ginning is happening locally. But after that, to know spinning, dyeing and finishing, weaving, knitting, the whole process, it really helps and it brings more ownership back to what they're doing. And likewise, when you flip it the other way, when you get some of the brands to go visit the farmers, I mean, that's the only way. You have to be on the ground and understand. And in our digital world, we've become more and more disconnected in those ways.
It's a great point. I think people forget that, you might have one crop a year and that's it for, 12 months or even longer. Or we sort of expect everything quickly and on demand, and having, alternatives, and agriculture can be so unpredictable.
Absolutely.
What about, where policymakers are concerned? We talked about certifications, maybe, somebody to look after these certifiers themselves, and, just thinking about how these different farmers in different parts of the world interact with their policymakers. Those relationships might be a little bit different. Mukhdoom or Tricia, would you like to maybe tell us about how you see farming relationships with, policymakers differing in North and other places?
So in our part of the world, farming is mostly done by, as you all know, by small farmers. But now they do have a very special role in defining the politics, because these are the ones who are in numbers, and they have impact on the legislators and the members of National Assembly or the provincial assemblies, and they do bring in some value for them to the systems, and they get the policies twisted in their favor. But the problem is that third world countries, which we all refer, are not governed by their own governments, because they have to be compliant to most of the countries are complying with the IMF sanctions or rules or instructions. So that's the point where the people start feeling the pain that our voices are not being heard, because the policy is being governed or administered by somewhere else from other quarters. But then these farmers do know that they're now, because after like 4 or 5 years earlier, the things have started changing when people are more active in the communication realm. They know that the problems are somewhere else as well. It's not just with their local governments. So, and the farmers do have a voice in the house of corridor, in the power of corridor, the corridors of the power. But it's sometimes it's a waste of energies. The other thing is that a lot of farmers have turned entrepreneurs themselves. So they are also into the seed and pesticides and logistic business themselves. So it's a round and round circle, and it's it's like an everyday run. The the vision should come from the leaders, and the vision especially in the agriculture is not coming from the governments, from the government, or from the policymakers. The word policy is a failure in our part of the world. It's not a policy. It's a makeshift solution for resolving the problems on ad hoc basis. If you look at the budget which is allocated to agriculture in these parts of the world, that would be, I mean, agriculture is the food pocket for the masses, but it's shameful, and so is with education. So and unfortunately, agriculture is not yet considered as an industry by the society itself. So that's a problem.
Yeah, in the US, it is a part of the Farm Bill that is passed about every 5 years. I mean, this Farm Bill looks at where it can support farming and agriculture, conservation, looks at any subsidies and support that can be provided. I think in the US, the subsidy system is quite different than in other regions, and that ties back into also some of the insurance that happens for different crops. Over, say, a 10-year period, the Farm Bill can be as much as 1 trillion to 1.5 trillion. I mean, it's extensive that the US will spend on farming. Specifically for cotton, there is the Buy American Cotton Act, otherwise known as BACA. And this is established, it has not been passed, but it has been about for the past year, bipartisan support to drive more demand for buying US cotton. This has always been a part of the challenges that the US cotton industry has been facing, is where there's increased demand. Over the past 10, 15 years, there's just been an increase in synthetics. And this has definitely caused a lot of challenges for the US cotton industry. And the cotton industry globally, I should say. And so with the Buy American Cotton Act, it's to give an incentive to the importers who are using US cotton and can prove that they're using US cotton.
It's interesting that when both of you, what I'm hearing is that the gap in the local policies creates a vacuum that is then filled by policies coming in from the global north, or the farmers of the global south, or the supply chain for the global south. Which means that, as Mukhdoom Sahab was saying, it's not their policy anymore, it's not their understanding of how the locals work. And then it can just be forced upon the communities and the farmers without their benefit. Which is quite scary. For, you know, if I was a farmer, I would be scared if I had this knowledge with me.
Mukhdoom, hearing Tricia describe the Buy American Cotton Act, you know, were you familiar with that act before, you know, it was raised on the call this morning?
Yeah, we are aware of you know, all the happenings in the sector, whether be it cotton or coal, or as long as it's close to agriculture and food, we keep an eye on it. But the problem is that when we use the term American cotton or Australian cotton or Brazilian cotton, now that's the point where we start, you know, feeling that there is sort of a competition, which should be. And if you look at the Chinese model, which I think is an excellent model of working, where China, you know, keeps on moving and then allows other to do its part of the work, and then it moves on to further projects or commodities or processes. So I think if cotton is something which is labor intensive and input intensive, it should be you know, asked. The American cotton should come to Pakistan. It should go to India or Bangladesh or Africa and ask them, okay, these are our standards. Kindly grow grow this cotton for us, and the farmers in US should focus on the crops which they're importing, or the products which they're importing. So there should be a shift. It should be like a partnership, not a competition between the products, because eventually the products from Pakistan or Tanzania or India or Bangladesh, they land up in US one way or another, and vice versa. So if the product cycle is going, the journey starts from point 1, which is in Pakistan, and ends at point 7, which is US, then there should be no point of competition, but there should be partnerships. So this partnership should be on the government-to-government basis, or even from the business to B2B platforms, where people should come and look at the costs of doing business. That's my point on that. So I really feel it painful when people start competing on things which are growing in God's land. It's everyone's land. We should share everything. The resources should be all yours or all mine or all ours, but not developing competition, but in partnerships. So and the policies should be, when it comes to a brand, when it comes to a product, the policy should be supportive of the entire supply chain, not just specified to one geography.
Tricia, it looked like you wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
I was going to say, completely agree. However, we also have fluctuation in pricing and challenges that exist. But I agree with you, Mukhdoom. We have to look at how we use our resources globally. However, there's the trade routes that have been established, and how do we deal with fluctuation in prices? Some of this also impacted by climate change, and other geopolitical challenges that exist. So if cotton farmers, do they stay as cotton farmers? Do they rotate with other crops? How do they look at the overall picture and what they need financially?
What I find wild is, we have the example of China, which Mukhdoom raised, and then also the US, which Tricia raised. And somehow the policymakers in a lot of these countries outside of the US and China just view farming as this really informal sector. And so it's just kind of surprising to me that we spend, as the US, we spend so much time and effort on these different trade policies and ways to subsidize these activities, but the policymakers in other countries maybe don't view it the same way, or don't put that same amount of effort or time or money into it.
Yes, completely. And Deb, you're sitting in a state in California that is very agricultural driven. And the policymakers there are, in fact, even in California, that's where US is really leading on setting up a framework and a common understanding around regenerative. So how much it can vary from even, within the United States, from state to state.
Yeah.
See, my thing is that I hear two big problems from this discussion. One is from the sustainability lens. That when you are exporting cotton from one end of the globe to other places, and then bringing it back all the way to the origin, amount of carbon footprint that you're generating just to satisfy your local constituents, right? And of course, they have the right to do that. And second thing that worries me is if, as a policy, you're forced to buy a certain region's cotton or agriculture product, especially in the global south, how does that impact the local communities and the farmers who are producing that? Right? Because demand is limited. Like Tricia said earlier, it's not increasing at the same pace as synthetics. So the demand for cotton is limited, and if you restrict one sort of commodity, how does that impact? What kind of signal does it send to the farmers in the global south that should just switch to something else? This is not good enough. Something that they've been doing for decades, should they just ditch it? What do you think comes up?
I think that when we are focusing on we're talking about cotton, I think we should talk about one crop cycle. It's not just cotton which is grown on those fields. There are other crops which follow those same fields. So if the entire operations are to be viewed, they should be viewed on the whole crop cycle of the farm itself, which is on an annual basis. So, and that's the only fact which keeps the interest of the farmer alive. Now, if we keep on, strangling the, streams of earning for the farmer, focus just cotton and leave other crops, I think slowly and gradually, which is happening, which is quite evident, and if it's happening, whether we like it or not, or whether we see it at all, or we are able to see it or not, is that people are leaving the farming practices at a very fast pace. And there will be no substitute for that, because people are getting away from farming itself, and it will have a devastating impact on not just the fashion industry, but on the food industry itself. What to talk about biodiversity? I think we should take it to the whole agricultural practice, the whole farming practice, which includes cotton, which somehow condones cotton. So that's until unless we bring that perspective into the supply chain, I don't think we will be standing even close to sustainable or even any sort of cotton.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, is where farmers are leaving the industry, and part of it is all these challenges that exist. So how do we future-proof this for what is needed for textiles and apparel? Cotton is the second most used fiber within the industry. And so how do we make sure that those materials are there? How do we make the farming more efficient? Everything being measured on yield, and to develop it in that way. I think it's going to continue to be a challenge in the future, because it's not as attractive for the growers. What support do they have, right? What understanding through the supply chain? How do they get the equity that they deserve for the extra work that they're doing for regenerative practices?
Could you take a moment and tell us a little bit about who these farmers are? One of the things that, I've heard is that a lot of the farming labor is done by women in the developing world. And then, I don't know if that's the case in other places as well. So could you both maybe take us a moment and tell us about who these farmers are? Yeah.
Sure. Like the farmers that are part of the Avalo cotton program, they are in the Amarillo, Lubbock area. We do have profiles on our farmers. Many of them are multi-generations that have, they might be fourth or fifth generation cotton farmers. We have one farmer who actually grew up on the farm, but left to go to business and then came back to the farm. I love talking to him because his perspective on farming from both the business side as well as on the ground is quite unique. We do have some farmers who it is the whole family that is farming, including their wife, who might be helping out with the accounting side, sons who are also involved in the business. So, but what always captures my attention is the multi-generations that have been working on this, and the stories that they tell of their fathers and grandfathers before them, especially in this area in Texas, where it's traditional cotton farmers.
Yeah, and I think the story is the same in everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, the story is the same. There are family farmers who have been there for generations, who love to farm, who are very close to the soil. In Pakistan, in Africa, and it's more of a community farming rather than the family farming, rather than individual farming. So if the men are doing the hard work, and then some work is left for the women. So it's not like a forced labor or forced work being done. I mean, but the only problem is the payments, whether the female farmers or the members are being paid well or not. That's something which could be addressed. But and it's not the major problem. It's a part of the it's a problem in the process. So mainly the farmers are there. We are working with something like 5,000 farmers, and I think most of them are just like that. It's like a family unit working all together on the farms, um, benefiting from the fruits. But if someone has to look into the distribution of those fruits, that could be addressed.
Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of the problems with payments to those farmers and, the staff who really support their farming activities?
I think there are as such they're not such the problems are not so big. In some cases, yes, a female did complain. Farmers did complain that they were not being paid well, but that's not a very prominent feature of the family farming mechanism. The other thing which we felt was that I think it's the training and of how things are done. So a lot of farmers have these, the female farmers have this because they're involved with the picking of the cotton or the tomatoes or whatever. So mostly they're doing the harvesting of the fruits when it comes to picking because of their soft hands, and they want to address that part. So they have these issues related with ergonomics and back aches and with some problems with the legs or with the hands because of the frequent picking, so strains or muscle pains. So what we did, we developed some sort of yoga trainings for the female farmers in Pakistan. So that's what we are doing with one of the leading gymnasiums in Pakistan. So we brought a female trainer, and then we took her to the farms where she trained the female farmers.
That's really cool. That's great. I think we need that too from sitting too much.
So yeah. So that's what we do. We do on farms, and it's done by the female farmers. The other thing which we did is do a psychological training of the farmers, especially men, because they are more aggressive. They are full of anger. Because there are a lot of challenges. So we do this psychological training with the farmers also. So what we noticed that over a period of time they've improved. The regression has gone down, and the family life has improved. So we do these sort of trainings. So we trying to address the problems.
That's remarkable. I know we had briefly touched on the impact of farming on the community. And so you just raised an aspect that I hadn't considered before, and that is how, not only do these agricultural activities impact, the financial livelihood of the community, but also just, socially have a tremendous impact on them as well.
Yeah. And also, if you can briefly, both of you, quickly, in a few sentences, describe the differences in the technology being used. Like Mukhdoom Sahab said, most of the cotton is still being picked in Pakistan and other areas. What do you see, Tricia, in your part of the world?
Yeah. So, we do not have the hand picking. We have the harvesters, or they might be renting if they don't own them, because it does cost quite a bit for the equipment. Then they're able to rent them. But I think the technology aspect, which was one thing I was going to bring up around kind of where the next generation is really looking at, and what is intriguing there's many programs within the agriculture and farming side around, young people coming into farming. And that's one area that is attractive to them about Avalo, because they look at, okay, how do you use machine learning and AI, and how do you use drones, and bringing in some of the tech side, which is very appealing to some of the next generation. And I think, that part is an area that we can take the industry forward in. But technology certainly varies. Some of the farms I've been on, it's amazing. Solar panels for energy, what they have then for tractors. It's interesting, the whole ag tech space.
Yes, but in Pakistan and in India and in Africa, you see, we have an ample supply of labor. Uh, the farm size is low, so the soil disturbance is also low. So the soils are quite, happy that they're not being tilled and pushed um, to the limits where they can cry. So they should cry. I think people are doing are piloting some mechanized picking or harvesting here in these parts of the world also. But I think because of the land size, the leveling, the availability of the seeds, and the crop which will be fitted in these mechanical harvesters because of the size issues. So yes, things are coming back, but as long as the families are working closely for each other, I think the hand picking will be going on, and the technology will come in. I mean, people are using nanotechnology as well in small farms, but then only if there's a demand or need, people will adopt that. But as long as it's economically viable, people will spend.
We've covered a lot of different aspects of fiber production, and I'm wondering, is there anything that maybe we haven't talked about yet that you think would be really important for people tuning in to know or to think about?
Yeah, I think another aspect that we haven't really talked so much about that might not be considered, and especially as we talk about people through the supply chain and brands, is input costs. And so whether it's fertilizer, water, pesticides, so even if you're in organic, you still have input costs as far as water, cost of seeds, and how that can vary as well. And so, it's as the farmer has to look at this, it's a business. So the cost of inputs, the cost of what they get out of it, right? At Avalo, that's where we're really looking at how we can lower those input costs. Our focus is on regenerative, not on organic. Our program, we built out to have 75% less fertilizer. This becomes even more important when we look at what's happening around the world. Our program also uses no irrigation, so it's completely rain-fed. And that helps the grower a lot. That's the economics that the grower needs in order to make the changes that we were talking about before, when it makes business sense.
Yeah, and just, in case people aren't aware, the conflict in Iran is having a just catastrophic effect on fertilizer prices right now.
Yeah, and of course, oil prices and those tractors that are run by oil, right? So these are all a part of the, there's a direct input cost, but there's the farming costs as well, and how that looks on the balance sheet for the grower.
Mm-hmm. How about for you, Mukhdoom, is there anything that maybe we haven't touched on yet, or did, what Tricia just said, I saw you nodding vigorously in agreement with a lot of the points that she raised, but
Yes, I do, because that's the same, I mean, which we feel and we are affected from. So I think we have touched a lot. We have talked a lot of things. There will be questions coming from the audience somewhere in the chat box, not today, but maybe in the days to come, and then we will be more than happy to reply to them and share experience with them. So I think this should go on, and more people should come in and talk more sensible than at least I have. So I think let's see what we have earned from this.
Yeah, and I want to encourage that if there's any opportunity to go and visit a farm, to take the time to do it. We offer farm tours. I think most of cotton organizations within each region offer some kind of tours. Reach out to either one of us. I'm sure we'd be happy to figure out a time to do that. I know for me, I learned so much from being on the ground. Actually, I have a farmer coming to New York, and I arranged have a dinner with a farmer for one of the brands, because they're like, I've never talked to a cotton farmer before. I'm like, this is perfect. I've got one coming to New York. So
lovely. By the way, you are welcome to come to Pakistan with some farmers so we can all see what's going on.
That's great.
All right. And I think in conclusion, I would like both of you to take a minute to say and elaborate on how do you feel about the North and South, the way that things have been done, And
How I feel about it is I always look at this from how people work together, right? Sakib, you and I have crossed paths for many years, and it's the people connection in order to drive change. And so while I find I'm often discouraged by what's happening in the world overall, if I can keep up with the people within a network and where good people want to make that change together, that's what's most important, is being on the ground to do that.
Yeah, and I feel that the farmer in our part of the world, in the geographies where we work, and in US and in the Western world are the same, because they have the same problems. At the end of the day, the risks are the same. The seed performs in the same way, and the inputs are really painful. So I think it's the same story with a different flavor.
We know you guys are really busy, so thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we close?
Well, thank you for putting this together. It's always valuable to raise, some of the concerns from different areas within the supply chain. So thank you very much. And I just want to say, fashion is connected to agriculture. So let's pay attention and support it as much as possible.
Lovely. Same here. And thank you so much.
thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Okay.